To scrap Obama-era regulations holding schools accountable for student performance. The new law will sweep aside key parts of the Every Student Succeeds Act, one of President Obama's final legislative achievements. Senate Democrats fighting to keep the regulations fear that this is going to increase Education Secretary Betsy DeVos's power over the states. Joining me now is her predecessor, John King, the former Education Secretary. Welcome very much. I excuse the beginnings of a cold here, so we're powering through today. Before we can get some rest. Tell me about this act particularly. It was a 50 to 49 vote, so a party line vote in the Senate with one switch, I guess. And what does this mean when you get down to the school level, to the local level? Well,
the key thing is that Every Student Succeeds Act was a reauthorization of the original Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, a civil rights law. And the federal role in education has always been to protect student civil rights, to keep a focus on whether or not all students access to opportunity. By removing the regulations, we're jeopardizing that civil rights legacy. What Congress has done is they've made it easier for states to ignore the performance of low-income students, to ignore the performance of African-American students, Latino students, students who are learning English, made it easier for states to avoid intervening when schools are struggling and providing the supports that are needed. So now it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we are vigilant in getting organized in states, insisting that states can't ignore the success of students who are most vulnerable.
Well, what's the justification for doing it? Is it budgetary or philosophical, or both?
It was largely philosophical. I think the claim was there's no need for a federal role. Let's leave it to states and districts and they'll sort it out. But, you know, having taught high school history, I can say confidently the history of the United States is not that states' rights and civil rights travel together. In fact, quite the contrary. And so there is an important federal role to make sure that states aren't overlooking students who are at risk.
What are you hearing from inside the department, from the career people, as Betsy DeVos has taken over, and she was a very controversial nominee?
Well, you know, it's clear they've been slow to get organized. They've not filled many of the senior political appointments. They've had some mishaps along the way over the first few weeks, some insensitive remarks around historically black colleges and universities. But, you know, my hope is that she will spend time visiting public schools, talking with public school educators, and get clear on the important role that public education plays at the foundation of our democracy and the long-term success of our economy.
Has she reached out to you as her predecessor, or you to her?
We had one conversation before she was confirmed. I have not spoken with her since, but I stand ready to try to be helpful. The extent that the administration is looking out for the kids who are most vulnerable.
Are you concerned about budget cuts as outlined in the president's budget proposal? There would be drastic cuts in discretionary spending to help pay for $54 billion increase in defense.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that. I think it's a huge mistake to take resources away from early learning, take resources away from our most needy schools, to take resources away from students who are trying to get a higher education so they can have better opportunities in the economy, to redirect those resources to tax cuts or to defense spending. So my hope is that Congress will do the wise thing and continue to make investments in education. Our long-term future depends on it.
John King will have to